my tabletop completed now. I've given it a couple of coats of finish. That'll just protect it whilst it's lying around. If it doesn't get dinged at all, then I'll be very pleased, and I won't have to do much more to it before I screw it down to the base. Hopefully you saw quite clearly in those shots how I've put a bevel on the back like I did the pallet wood one. Put a little bevel around the top and bottom here just to take away the sharp edges. And I think it came out quite nice. And because of the way it looks, I'm calling it the Jupiter table. I think I'm holding it the right way up. Yep, you can actually see there's the big spot on Jupiter. And yeah, I like that. So next thing now is to work on the rails and the legs. I'm making a few changes. The legs are going to be a little bit thicker than the originals, but a little less wide both at the bottom and at the top. And the taper angle on the inside of the legs probably be a little bit different as well. The rails are going to be a little bit beefier in the middle, and they're going to taper out towards the edges as well. So again, more differences, but hopefully the design will work out. I mean, I've mocked it up here, just holding it in the vise with a few clamps, put the top on, and I'm pleasantly surprised with how good that looks. Now, hopefully when it's completed, I'll like it as well. Now the joinery is going to be slightly different here. I'm going to cut tenons on the top of the legs and put those into the bottom of the rail. The rails are going to be joined together with cross halving, so I'll be removing a section halfway through at the bottom of one rail, halfway from the top of the other, and then they can go together and be flush top and bottom. Anyway, I'll show you that as I do it.
So I'll start by setting my mortise gauge to the width of my mortising chisel. I've penciled in where I want the cross halving and the two mortises to be, and now it's just a case of using the marking gauge to define the shape of the mortise.
So I've laid out on both the rails for the angled ends, a little flat there for a screw up into the top, mortises here and here, and marking out for the cross halving. The other rails pretty much the same, except of course the cross halving mark out is on the other side. Just knifing the ends on the mortises. I've shown you how to cut mortises on the it was the little stool project, and you can find more videos on mortises on my main channel. But really what we're taking is I'm using a mortising chisel. You could use a bevel edge chisel if you like. I tend to find these are easier. And first I'm just going to define most of the length of the mortise. I'm going to start just inside each far end. Now I'm going to cut in between these marks, and finally when I'm down to depth, clean up back to the far mark. First of all, I'm going to remove just a shallow amount of material which will register the chisel left and right when I start chopping. And I'll just do that by pairing up against my marks. And if you want to go for speed, fine, just chop as hard as you like, quickly as you like. I find this quite a pleasurable experience, chopping a mortise, so I just take my time, carefully stick between the lines. I'll put the radio on, and before I know it I'll have all four mortises chopped to depth, all nice and square. What we mustn't forget, of course, is that this is going to be a sloped wall on the mortise, so I can use my bevel gauge just to give me an idea of where I should be going when I'm chopping this end. This other end is straight down. I've marked out the profile of the tenons for the tops of the legs, and I'll cut those out first before marking for the cheek cuts.
I just need to pair the shoulders nice and square, and once I've cleaned the saw marks off, this joint will fit a treat. Having eased all of what were going to be the exposed edges, I glued the leg assemblies together, levelled them in the way I did the pallet table. Then I finished the assemblies with a coat of sanding sealer and 2 coats of lacquer. Here I'm just transferring the centres of the attachment holes through onto the underside of the tabletop. A stud in the central hole through the cross halving locates the cross rails around the hole which I used to create the circle. I start the holes off with an awl. Then instead of using a drill, I use a gimlet. Before I bore right the way through the tabletop, I'll just set a little masking tape marker so I don't go too deep. With all the pilot holes drilled and any spelching around the holes removed, I'm ready to set the base assembly on. It's worth noting that the clearance holes for these screws are well oversized to allow for any movement that might happen with the table. Thank you for watching the Scalable table builds. I shall be taking a short break from Get Into Woodworking, but you can continue to follow me on my main channel. Take a moment to like, comment and subscribe, and follow me on social media for extra photos and videos from the workshop. Cheerio!